today as various speakers have come to the floor, and I want to just join in the outrage about what has happened over there at the IRS. The idea that the IRS would pick specific groups and target them. In this case, apparently they used the name Patriot, and they searched through incoming applications for these 501c4s. They used the term Tea Party, and they were obviously focusing on one side of the political spectrum. They shouldn't have done that. And there's no doubt the people that are writing me, the people that in America have watched this, feel a sense of outrage. And they should be outraged. They're outraged. I'm outraged. And one of the things we have to understand as a result of this is that the IRS has tremendous power. It has the power to audit. It has the power to request information. It has the power to refer for criminal conduct. I think in many cases the IRS is probably more feared than prosecutors' offices who also have tremendous power. And as many know, I've had some real experience there, being a federal prosecutor, being a state attorney general. That's power that should be used in a very, very careful way. And you don't pick one part of the political spectrum and target people when you're entering a phase of a prosecution or an audit as the IRS was doing. And I think our president, who is a lawyer, understands that, and President Obama has called for the top IRS official's resignation. And that official has resigned, and that is the right thing to do. Such action is inexcusable. No one disputes that. More disciplinary action is likely. The FBI is investigating, and I hope they do a full, thorough, and complete investigation. And of course, as I said before, the IRS should not be targeting specific sides of the political spectrum. But you know, in thinking about this, there's another failure here, and we should talk about that at the same time. The IRS does not have clear rules for nonprofit groups and political activity. We need transparency about what is allowed and what is not allowed. And those rules should be applied to all groups across the board on all sides of the political spectrum. Front groups for huge amounts of campaign money are continually allowed to file false statements with the IRS and get away with it. Over and over again, they do this. This is wrong. Whether the group is liberal or conservative, Democrat or Republican, this is wrong across the board. How did this happen? We know that lots of secretive groups want to funnel cash to influence elections, to get their candidates elected. But campaign finance rules are supposed to have transparency. How do these groups, left or right, keep their money secret? They hide behind an organization that's listed with the IRS called a 501c4. They ask for permission under the IRS to be a 501c4 status organization. This is a tax-exempt, nonprofit corporation regulated by the IRS. These groups have one big hurdle to jump through. The 501c4 has to be set up for, and I quote now, for the promotion of social welfare, end quote. In fact, the law says it must be exclusively, the law that Congress wrote says it must be exclusively for social welfare. So that's the law Congress wrote. Seems pretty clear, doesn't it? Seems like Congress was saying what it intended here. But the IRS muddied the water by deciding exclusively actually means primarily. Primarily engaged in social welfare activity means at least 51% of the time. Not 100% of the time, 51% of the time. To me, this is baffling, and it is completely misguided. But to make it more confusing, the IRS regulations state that the promotion of social welfare does not include direct or indirect participation or intervention in political campaigns on behalf or in opposition to any candidate for public office. To establish a 501c4 corporation, the organizers must file a form with the IRS, pledging that they do not plan to spend money to influence elections. It appears that many of these groups have lied on their applications for nonprofit status, and it also appears they are allowed to get away with it. That is corrupt, and it is also a crime, and nothing appears to be done about it. That is a scandal right there. As the IRS stands by, as these groups, whatever their political affiliation, mock federal tax laws. The Center for Responsive Politics noted that in the 2012 election, 501c4 groups spent $254 million to support or oppose candidates. So why would someone donate to a 501c4? Instead of giving money to the parties or to the campaigns of candidates they support. Simple, to avoid disclosure, to avoid disclosure. If someone gives $1,000 to a political campaign, that is required to be reported, and the donor is known. It's out there. It's in the public. But if you give $1,000 to a 501c4, that money is improperly engaging in political activity, and the public remains in the dark. So if you give $1,000 to a 501c4, nobody knows about it, but it can go out under these rules and engage in political activity. This secret money is a bipartisan outrage. They are seeking to influence elections, not promote social welfare. This has to change. I have long argued that it must change. Since 2010, many of us have come to this floor calling for vitally needed reforms, demanding that we change the way we do business here. I believe that requires a constitutional amendment, overturning the disastrous Buckley and Citizens United decisions by the Supreme Court, restoring to Congress and the states the authority to regulate elections. We have also pushed for the Disclose Act. That legislation would have taken the IRS out of the business of investigating these groups, a job it is failing to do anyway. It would have required open reporting with the Federal Election Commission. The Disclose Act doesn't ban any group, but it does say the American people have the right to know who is trying to influence their vote, who is paying for all those ads on television. There's a saying in Washington from the Watergate era, follow the money. Follow the money. That's what I'm trying to do. Where does the money come from, and where is the money going? Not a single Republican voted for the Disclose Act. Not one. In fact, they filibustered it, blocked it from an up or down vote. Partisan bias and abuse by the IRS cannot be tolerated. President Obama is not tolerating it. But Americans are also fed up with the deception by shadowy groups that continue to drown our elections in anonymous cash. The fact that these secret political money groups also serve as tax breaks for extremely wealthy people adds insult to injury. We need clear rules from the IRS. Exclusive means exclusive in my book. Exclusive means exclusive. When the Congress says exclusive, it means exclusive. And we need to enforce those rules equally on all applicants for the tax-exempt status, every single one. If you are a charity or a true social welfare organization, you should not pay taxes. There's no need to publicize your donors. But if you're looking to influence American votes and how Americans vote, the voters should know who you are. There must be disclosure at the very least. In closing, I will say we have to change the way we do business. The failure of IRS bureaucrats, billionaires writing political checks but hiding in the shadows, and avoiding taxes. This has to change. The time has come to change this. Thank you, Mr. President, and I yield the floor. And I note the absence of a quorum.
Clerk will call the roll.
Mr. Alexander.
Good morning. Here we are in National Women's Health Week, again proclaiming the glories of the Affordable Care Act and what it means to women. I'll talk about that in a moment. When it comes to addressing the urgent needs for the American people, our priority in Congress is clear. We must create jobs. Unfortunately, House Republicans seem to think that their main responsibility is to do nothing. Oh, for those of you who were here yesterday, you know that I have lost my voice. That may be good news to some. But let's see how far we can go with this. It's to do nothing. Here we are 134 days into the 113th Congress without one vote on a jobs bill. 54 days after the Senate passed its budget. So we still haven't moved forward to the budget process. But this do-nothing agenda does not reflect the priorities of the American people. It is an agenda that only the Republicans seem interested in pursuing. And so you see a series of subterfuges, job evasions. Today's job evasion is that the Republicans have decided to vote on the Patients' Rights Repeal Act, their 37th attempt to repeal our country's landmark health reform bill. That's 37 votes, 43 days, $52.4 million on an obvious evasion of our responsibility to work on the priorities of the American people. Not only is this a clear waste of time and of taxpayer dollars, it is a deliberate vote to eliminate the affordable quality health and care benefits millions of Americans are already enjoying. For those of you who were with us yesterday, you got the card with many.
President, I'm honored, actually privileged to stand here today and to say a good word on behalf of Ernest J. Moniz, also known as Dr. Moniz, also known as Ernie Moniz, and one of my favorite people from the world of academia. And I have here in my hand a bio, and I'm just going to actually read a lot. It's not very long. It's worth listening to. But Dr. Ernest J. Moniz is the Cecil and Ida Green Professor of Physics and Engineering Systems at MIT. His research at MIT, where he served under faculty since 1973, has focused on energy technology and policy. Dr. Moniz also serves as the director of MIT's Energy Initiative and the MIT Laboratory for Energy and the Environment. From 1997 until 2001, Dr. Moniz served as Undersecretary of the Department of Energy. Prior to that time, he served as the Associate Director for Science in the Office of Science and Technology Policy and the Executive Office of the President from 1995 to 1997. In addition to his work at MIT and the Department of Energy, Dr. Moniz has served on any number of boards of directors and commissions, including the President's Council of Advisors on Science and Technology from 2009 until today, the Department of Defense Threat Reduction Advisory Committee from 2010 until today, and on the Blue Ribbon Commission on America's Nuclear Future from 2010 to 2012. Dr. Moniz is a fellow of the American Association for the Advancement of Science, the Humboldt Foundation, and the American Physical Society. In '98, he received the Seymour Cray HPCC Industry Recognition Award for Vision for Leadership in Advancing Scientific Simulation. Dr. Moniz received a Bachelor of Science degree, summa cum laude, in physics from Boston College and a doctorate in theoretical physics from Stanford University. Now, I've been privileged to know this man for a number of years. Our oldest son was an undergraduate, mechanical engineer at MIT, graduated a few years ago. I remember holding a field hearing at MIT, about a half dozen or so years ago. And Dr. Moniz was one of our witnesses. And among the things that I liked about him, he was just so approachable. He just, we all heard the term good guy. He's just a really good guy. And sometimes we think of somebody as a professor, ivy tower, and kind of out of touch, unable to communicate and connect with people. He couldn't be more different from that caricature. He is a real person. He is really smart. And he's able to explain things as a professor, and he's able to explain really complex concepts, whether it happens to be nuclear energy or clean coal or you name it. He's able actually just be able to explain these things so that even I can understand. He has a wonderful sense of humor. He's a guy who likes working with, if you happen to be a young person or an older person, a Democrat or Republican, he just works well with all of them. Smart as a whip. Got a great way about him. Approachable. Very can-do sort of attitude. And I think the President's made a great choice here. I think to Ernie and to his family, I really appreciate his willingness to serve in a lot of capacities already, and now to be willing to serve in this capacity. Hopefully it's good for him and for his life and for his family. I think it's certainly going to be good for our country. So we appreciate that. And I just want to say to my colleagues who haven't had a chance to get to know him, I think you're going to like him a lot, and you'll enjoy working with him. I certainly have. The other thing I want to say is, I've stood here just this week talking about executive branch Swiss cheese, where we have in the executive branch of our federal government too many positions that they don't have someone confirmed for those positions. In some cases, the administration has been derelict in terms of sending its nominations because they spend forever vetting nominations because they don't want to send somebody to us that has even a flaw or a blemish. And as a result, they spend, I think, entirely too much time vetting nominees. So we wait for their nominees. In some cases, when they get here, even if they're really good, really well qualified, we delay those nominations further. Sometimes we put, whether it's Democrat or Republican president, we put the nominees through not torture, but something pretty close to it. We need good people to be willing to serve. And when they step up and say they're willing to serve, we need to process, we need to vet those nominations, scrub them hard, but then at the end of the day, we need to move them forward. We took on the Environment and Public Works Committee a small but important step today with an important nominee. The President's nominated a woman named Gina McCarthy to be the administrator for the Environment Protection Agency. She is enormously well qualified. She's already been confirmed by the Senate for the air pollution side of EPA. She's done a very nice job. She's been nominated by a Democratic president. In the past, she served for 5 Republican governors. And smart, hardworking, great credentials, approachable, somebody who's able to understand things, explain things, and she'll do a great job. We've had a hard time being able to move our nomination out of Environment and Public Works Committee. Today we're joined by Republican colleagues to be there. Unfortunately, none of them voted to report her nomination out. My hope is that we have reported her out, unfortunately, on a straight party line vote. My hope is that we'll have an opportunity to do really what we did a number of years ago, about 7 or 8 years ago. Mike Leavitt, former governor of Utah, was nominated to be head of EPA. And there was some delay in his nomination. We actually had, I think, a markup business meeting scheduled to consider his nomination. The Democrats boycotted that meeting, and we had to wait for a couple of weeks and had another meeting, and Democrats showed up. We reported him out with Democratic support, and later we voted for his nomination. Big bipartisan vote, I think over 70, 80 votes in favor of his nomination. My hope is that's what we'll do with Gina McCarthy. She deserves a vote, and I think from my perspective, she deserves a positive affirmative vote. But anyway, we got Ernie Moniz coming our way later this afternoon about 40 minutes. My hope is my colleagues will join me and my others in giving them a big vote and sending them to work for our country one more time. Thank you so much. And with that, I yield the floor.
Mr. President,
Senator for South Carolina.
I'd like unanimous consent to engage in a colloquy with my colleagues from Georgia.
Without objection.
Okay, thank you. This is about Dr. Ernest Moniz's appointment to be Secretary of Energy. I put a hold on Dr. Moniz, not because anything to do with him. He's a wonderful fellow. MIT professor. He's been intimately associated with the Department of Energy, including the MOX program. And all of us in Georgia and South Carolina look forward to working with him. What we've been upset about is that the Obama administration's decision to stop construction temporarily of the MOX facility. It's about 60% complete. What is MOX? It is a program to take 34 metric tons of weapons-grade plutonium in excess of our defense needs and dispose of it by turning it into commercial-grade fuel. It is enough weapons-grade plutonium to make 17,000 warheads. And in 2000, there was an agreement between the United States and Russia. They would dispose of 34 metric tons. We would dispose of 34 metric tons. And we've been studying how to do that. And in 2010, the federal government, the Obama administration, in the agreement with the Russians to move forward, said that we would MOX the 34 metric tons of weapons-grade plutonium. We would turn it into mixed oxide fuel to be used in commercial reactors. It's a technology deployed in France, and that was the way forward. And to the administration's credit, we're finally moving forward. We went to the facility, myself, Senator Isaacs, and Senator Chambliss, a couple of years ago and finally saw the thing moving forward. It's about 60% built. Now, in the budget proposal of the President, they've stopped construction to study an alternative. There is no other alternative. If you tried to turn it into vitrified glass material, that would take more money and more time than doing MOX, and it hasn't been proven to work the way it's set up today. At the end of the day, the problems that we should be focusing on is the cost overruns of the MOX program. It's about $2 billion over cost. And I would join with the administration to sit down with a contractor and try to recoup that $2 billion to find a way forward to make it affordable. There's statutes in place that require a $100 million a year fine to be paid to the state of South Carolina if we don't meet our disposition goals. Last year, we extended that statute by 2 years because we don't want the fine money, we want the MOX program. It's good for the country, it's good for the world. And now that we've stopped to study, our fear is that we're stopping and studying an alternative that doesn't exist, that can't be cheaper than the $2 billion. The technology that there is no other way to do it. We've been studying this for about 15 years, and we'll be breaking the agreement with the Russians. Other than that, we don't have a problem with what they're doing. What we want to do is sit down with the contractor and the administration to lower cost of the program, but keep it moving forward. This administration has talked consistently about reducing nuclear proliferation and making the world safer from the use of nuclear materials. This is a program that started in the Clinton administration, Bush, now Obama, that really would accomplish that. 34 metric tons of weapons-grade plutonium, enough to make 17,000 warheads, would be taken off the market forever. A sword becomes a plowshare by making commercial-grade fuel out of it. It's a good program. We need to complete the program. And the reason we put a hold on the nominee for Secretary of Energy is to get everybody's attention. Been talking with Dennis McDonough, been talking with the administration. We hope we can resolve this, but we're here today to speak for Georgia and South Carolina. We've got to deal with the federal government. We agreed to take this 34 metric tons of weapons-grade plutonium years ago with the understanding it would leave South Carolina and not affect the environment of South Carolina and Georgia in a permanent way. And we're very DOE friendly in South Carolina and Georgia. The Savannah River site's right on the border. There's almost as many people from Georgia working in the site there is from South Carolina. So my colleagues from Georgia have been absolutely terrific. And at the end of the day, we're going to be insistent that the federal government keep its commitment to the state of South Carolina and Georgia and to the Russians. We're going to make sure that we dispose of this weapons-grade plutonium, and we're going to be more cost-conscious about it. But we're going to let Secretary Moniz, Ernie Moniz, become Secretary of Energy here in about 40 minutes. I'm going to vote for him, but I will continue to slow down the process and make life incredibly miserable if we can't find an accommodation that I think is fair. My state, the state of Georgia, has really been a good partner with the federal government and the Department of Energy on energy issues. Several years ago, when I first became a senator, and I think it's 2002, 2003, we agreed to leave some waste in the bottom of about 50 tanks that contained high-level waste material from the Cold War era, from reactors at Savannah River site used to make tritium to help fuel hydrogen bombs. And by leaving a small amount in the bottom of the tank, the hill, and filling it up with concrete, we were able to save $16 billion in cleanup costs. Instead of scraping it all out, sending it to Yucca Mountain, which never came about, we were able to leave a small amount in a way that not hurt the environment of South Carolina and Georgia. But now in this budget, they're reducing the tank closure by $106 million. You can't do it that way. You can't get us to help save money for the federal government and take on, I think, a reasonable risk, not much of a risk at all, then short us. I mean, people are going to stop dealing with the federal government, Republican or Democratic administrations, when it comes to nuclear materials if this is going to be the way we do business. People in Georgia and South Carolina have been very accommodating. We appreciate the Savannah River site. It's a wonderful DOE facility. We're proud of it. We're proud of the employees, but we're not going to be taken advantage of. So here's what we're asking. We're asking for the administration to sit down with us and others who care about this to find a way to lower the cost of the MOX construction, but continue forward with the construction and get the MOX facility up and running so we can honor our commitment to the Russians and get this weapons-grade plutonium off the market. Count us in terms of lowering cost. Count us out when it comes to stopping the program in the middle, trying to find an alternative that doesn't exist. Now, as to the tanks, you're going to honor your commitment. The federal government is going to honor its commitment to the people of South Carolina and Georgia to get these tanks closed up on time and on schedule. And we have, again, saved $16 billion over the life of the close-up plan for the tanks just by being reasonable. And when it comes to MOX, there were 3 facilities planned to take the weapons-grade plutonium and turn it into a commercial-grade fuel. We're able to consolidate 2 of the facilities into 1 and save $2 billion. I'm all for saving money, but I'm also all for keeping one's word. And to our friends in the administration, we will work with you when we can, fight you when we must, but when it comes to this, I hope there will be a lot of bipartisanship for the delegations in South Carolina and Georgia to make sure that we honor the commitment entered into between the federal government and the state of South Carolina that will affect our friends in Georgia and keep this program moving. We're not asking for too much. As a matter of fact, we're insisting on you holding up your end of the bargain because we've held up our end of the bargain. And to our friends in the administration, let's see if we can solve this problem. But to my colleagues in this body, I would hope that I would have the good judgment and common sense to support you if you found yourself in this position, trying to do something good for the nation and have it get off the rail. I hope I would be willing to help you when it comes to something like this. It is very difficult to deal with these high-level waste issues, particularly weapons-grade plutonium. When you find somebody who's willing to be reasonable and helpful, the last thing you need to do is change the rules in the middle of the game. With that, I would recognize Senator Isaacson and just quickly ask him, from your point of view, do you see this as a fundamental breach of the agreement we've had for years? What effect do you think it would have on our nonproliferation agenda, and how does it affect South Carolina and Georgia?
First of all, I want to thank the senator from South Carolina for his leadership on this important issue, and I'm proud to join the senior senator from Georgia, Saxby Chambliss, and in effect join Sam Nunn, who was a former United States senator from Georgia, who with Dick Lugar brought about the Nuclear Threat Initiative program, which brought about the Treaty of 2000, which called for the reduction by 68 metric tons of nuclear material. And I would answer your question, Senator Graham, by saying this. With another question, where else in the United States of America are there two states willing to accept plutonium, reprocess it into fuel rods for commercial use, and do it safely, and have dealt with nuclear materials for over 50 years? That's Georgia and South Carolina. The idea that you can fund a study to look for an alternative is laughable. That's just merely a smokescreen for the current administration's position. And the senator is exactly right. Senator Chambliss and I, Senator Scott, Senator Graham, we are happy to sit down with the administration, look at the cost overrun on the MOX facility, find ways to find savings. But the dumbest economic decision in the world would be to stop the process when you're half finished, because then you waste every dime that's already been spent, and you have to even spend more money on an alternative that does not exist. So I want to add my support to the remarks of Senator Graham and my state's support to reprocess plutonium that's weapons-grade plutonium into reprocessed materials that fuel power plants and commercial opportunities. That's a good use. That's a good way to get rid of this nuclear material, and it's also a good way to keep it out of the hands of a terrorist. Because we don't destroy it and it lays around in Russia or anywhere else, it's always suspect of being stolen or being used in a way none of us would ever want. And I thank the senator for his leadership.
I can't thank Senator Isaac, and Senator Scott is with us at every step. But Johnny, you've been terrific. I just want to let everybody in Georgia know that when it comes to Savannah Riverside, we've worked as a team for years, and I just can't thank you enough. And Senator Chambliss is just one of the leading national security experts in the Senate, and he's been intimately involved with the MOX program. And my question for Senator Chambliss is that we have an agreement with the Russians. They will dispose of their 34 metric tons of excess plutonium, enough to create 17,000 warheads in Russia, and we've agreed to do the same. If we are seen to stop and not honor our commitment, what do you think what reaction would the Russians have? And is it smart to delay this program in the times in which we live? Because I worry about the materials being compromised, not so much in South Carolina and Georgia, but very much in Russia. Could you please tell us your thoughts about that?
Mr. President, just like my colleague from Georgia, Senator Isaacson, I want to thank Senator Graham for his leadership on this issue. He's right. We've been to the facility a number of times to examine what is going on over there, and it's great work being done by highly trained, highly educated individuals to deal with one of the most sensitive products that we have in this country. And you're exactly right, Senator Graham, that there are significant consequences from an international standpoint if the numbers in the President's budget are allowed to stand. And that's why we've had conversations with a number of individuals currently at the Department of Energy, and why we had a conversation with Dr. Moniz in preparation for his confirmation by this body. And those discussions have led to the fact that, as you say, we are willing, and we have got their agreement that they are willing to sit down with the contractor and let's talk about money. That's what the real issue is, because we're talking about a budget item and whether or not we can afford to do this. And if we don't involve the contractor, then obviously we can't get that number down to a manageable number. So again, with your leadership, we look forward to working with Dr. Moniz and others with respect to sitting down with the contractor and coming to some resolution of the ultimate budget number that's going to be needed. With respect to Russia, I mean, here we are. The President met with President Medvedev in 2010, and the two of them in a press conference talked about the MOX facility and the agreement on MOX. And here we are 3 years later with this President submitting a budget number that in effect starves his program and would have the obvious intended result of eliminating this program, and thus breaking his word with President Medvedev in 2010, and also breaking the United States agreement with Russia. That has the potential to have very serious consequences on the international stage. Also, abandoning the project is going to have severe economic impacts to both the state of Georgia and the state of South Carolina, because of the individuals that have been working there for now, Senator Isaacson said, 50 years. It's also going to strand up to 64 metric tons of weapons-grade plutonium. And where else is it going to go? There is no place for it to go. There is no state jumping up and down saying, please bring your uranium and your plutonium to my state, and we will deal with it. You can transport it into my state. In fact, the exact opposite is happening. It was intended that we would process this this plutonium, and it will ultimately be shipped to Yucca Mountain, as Senator Graham alluded to. Now the state of Nevada is saying no. They're throwing their hands up and saying we don't want that processed material in our state because it is hazardous waste. Well, what we're saying is we're happy doing what we're doing because we've got those trained, sophisticated professionals that know how to deal with this hazardous material. They do an outstanding job of it. We have spent billions of dollars constructing the facilities to the point to where they're 40% away from being completed now. And if we just accept the President's budget, then we're going to have wasted all of that money in the construction phase of the buildings that are there, Mr. President. And also, we're not going to have anywhere to put this 64 metric tons of hazardous material, of weapons-grade plutonium. So this stands to have economic impacts to our part of the country. It stands to certainly create international issues with the Russians if we break our agreement with them. And then also, just as significantly, it leaves 64 metric tons of weapons-grade plutonium outstanding with nowhere to go with it, nowhere to store it. So the MOX project was designed to deal with a very sophisticated issue years and years and years ago, and it just makes no sense whatsoever to stop in the middle of it now and saying, well, we just don't have the money to take care of something that is as hazardous and potentially as life-threatening as what this weapons-grade plutonium is. We do need to spend our money wisely. We've got to be careful. But, Mr. President, there are agreements that we need to honor. There are certain aspects of governing that need to be done and need to be done in the right way, and this is simply one of those. So with the continued leadership of Senator Graham and Senator Isaacson and Senator Scott, I look forward to us sitting down with Dr. Moniz once he is confirmed, and we're all going to vote to confirm him today because he has so much knowledge about this. One thing we failed to mention is the fact that he's the guy that negotiated the agreement. And he's the guy that the President is saying, well, we know you went through some very difficult times in negotiating this agreement with the Russians, but to heck with your agreement, to heck with all the work you did. And thank goodness his attitude is that, look, I want to work with you, and we want to find a way forward on this, and we look forward to his confirmation being completed, to sitting down with he and the contractor, and let's figure out a way that we can make this project the success that it, continued success that has been thus far, and also moving forward. With that, Mr. President, I would yield back to Senator Graham.
Well, thank you, Senator Chambliss. And Senator Reid, would you like to?
Thank you, Senator. Could I request Senator Scott to be recognized as the morning business after Senator Graham has completed his remarks?
Without objection.
And just to conclude, I want to thank both of my colleagues. You've been great partners on this issue and many others, and we've tried to be good partners with the federal government. We're proud of Savannah Riverside, all that's been accomplished over the last 50 years. And as we go into a new phase of trying to get rid of Cold War materials, 34 metric tons of weapons-grade plutonium here and in Russia, 60% completion of the MOX program. As to the $2 billion overrun, that is not lost upon me as being a lot of money. That's a lot of money. But what I'm telling my fellow members of the body here and the country as a whole, there is no way you can find an alternative to MOX cheaper than that $2 billion. It's just not possible. We've been studying this thing forever, and in the agreement itself with the Russians, it specifically says MOX, and it prohibits us as a nation from burying the plutonium. So this is the way forward, and I promise the members of the body and the administration we will lower the cost overruns. I promise. But this is a complicated scientific endeavor but we will lower the cost overruns. What we will not do is stop the program when it's 60% complete and study an alternative that has no possibility of coming about scientifically and could never lower cost and interrupt the disposition of this weapons-grade plutonium and breach the agreement with the Russians. We will not be a party to that. We will keep talking. As to Mr. Moniz, he'll be an outstanding Secretary of Energy. We look forward to working with him, and I appreciate my colleagues coming down and joining this colloquy and putting everything on record about Savannah Riverside MOX. And with that, I'll yield back and recognize Senator Reid.
Senator from Rhode Island.
Mr. President, before I begin my remarks, I would ask unanimous consent that at the conclusion of my remarks, Senator Chambliss be recognized for up to 10 minutes to speak as a morning business.
Without objection.
Thank you very much. Mr. President, July 1st is less than 7 weeks away, and unless we act, the interest rate on student-based loans will rise from 3.4% to 6.8%. Student loan debt is second only to mortgage debt for American families. Now is not the time to add to student loan debt by allowing the interest rate on need-based student loans to double. I've worked with Chairman Harkin, Leader Reid, and many of my colleagues to develop a fully offset 2-year extension of the current student loan interest rate. Instead of charging low and moderate income students more for their student loans, the Student Loan Affordability Act will keep rates where they are while closing loopholes in the federal tax code. We should take this legislation up and pass it without delay. One of my concerns is, and I know many of my colleagues, including myself, are working on longer-term solutions that more accurately reflect market rates, but my concern is, frankly, that we'll run up against this July deadline and we won't have the longer-term solution in place. We have to do something, and that's why I would urge we pick up this legislation as quickly as possible. Our first priority must be to reassure students and families that the interest rate will not double from 3.4% to 6.8% on July 1st. We have to do that, and then we can work towards a longer-term solution. We also owe it to them to commit to this longer-term solution, to develop an approach that will set interest rates and terms and conditions on all student loans that will be more reflective of market rates, but also more beneficial to students and their families who are borrowing this money. Senator Durbin and I have put forward a long-term proposal that would set student loan interest rates based on the actual cost of operating the program, so the federal government would not be offering student loans at a profit. There are other long-term proposals on the table. Some of them, such as the one reported out of the Education and Workforce Committee in the House today, could actually leave students worse off than they would be if the rates were to double. We need to take the time to fully consider comprehensive solutions to our student loan debt crisis, solutions that will make college more affordable, not less so. Rather than rushing to overhaul the federal student loan program without fully considering the impact on students and college affordability, the Student Loan Affordability Act will secure low interest rates until Congress can act on the reauthorization of the Higher Education Act. Without swift congressional action, more than 7 million students will have to pay an estimated additional $1,000 for each loan. These are the students who need the help the most. 60% of dependent subsidized loan borrowers come from families with incomes of less than $60,000, while 80% of independent subsidized loan borrowers come from families with incomes below $40,000. Unlike Republican proposals that would balance the budget on the backs of students by charging them higher interest rates or make students vulnerable to exorbitant interest rates in the future, this legislation, which we're proposing, will help ensure that college remains within reach for students who rely on federal loans to pay for their education. And this legislation is fully paid for. Specifically, the pay-fors would be limiting the use of tax-deferred retirement accounts as a complicated estate planning tool, close a corporate offshore tax loophole by restricting, quote, earnings strippings, unquote, by expatriated entities, and close an oil and gas industry tax loophole by treating oil from tar sands the same as other petroleum products. We should not be collecting additional revenue from students when we can eliminate wasteful spending in the tax code. And we should not allow the interest rate to double on July 1st. I hope all of my colleagues will support, as the first step, the 2-year extension till we can truly come up with a thoughtful, comprehensive approach to long-term student lending in the United States. And with that, I would yield back.
Mr. President.
Senator from Georgia.
Mr. President, I rise to speak about the resignation of Acting IRS Commissioner Stephen Miller. The request by President Obama for Mr. Miller's resignation is too little, too late. This is just another example of the President continuing to search for a scapegoat for his own administration's misdeeds. Mr. President, the American people deserve trust, and this egregious abuse of power demonstrates the worst fears of the American people, that they cannot trust their government. It's been 2 years since these incidents were first reported, and while members of Congress were led to believe that no malfeasance occurred, the details of the IG report were more shocking than we could have realized, as many conservative groups were not only targeted for additional reviews, but were harassed as well. Moreover, Mr. President, in some cases, information was purposefully leaked by the Internal Revenue Service. These actions are unacceptable, and while President Obama's reactions seem to be sincere, he has not yet demonstrated to the American people that all of those responsible will be brought to justice. Above all, Mr. President, we got to make sure this never happens again. And I would yield the floor and suggest the absence of a quorum.
Clerk will call the roll.
Mr. Alexander.
President, I ask unanimous consent to vacate the quorum.
Senator from Oregon.
Mr. President, I believe that we have run out of those here in the Senate who wish to speak. I would just like to state again that this is a nominee who is supported by both Senator Murkowski and myself. This is a nominee who got an overwhelming bipartisan vote in the Senate Energy and Natural Resources Committee. As I said earlier, I think he is an individual who is smart about energy policy. He is savvy about how the Department of Energy operates, and he is a solution-oriented person, and Democrats and Republicans in the Senate Energy and Natural Resources Committee saw that in the confirmation process. There are huge challenges ahead of him at the Department of Energy, but I think he is very, very qualified for this position. I would urge all senators, Democrats and Republicans, to support the nominee. And with that, Mr. President, I yield back all remaining time. On both sides.
Is there objection? Without objection. Question occurs on the nomination. Is there a sufficient second? There appears to be. Clerk will call the roll.
Mr. Alexander, Ms. Ayotte, Ms. Baldwin, Mr. Barrasso, Mr. Baucus, Mr. Begich, Mr. Bennett, Mr. Blumenthal, Mr. Blunt, Mr. Bozeman, Mrs. Boxer.
Yes.
Mr. Brown. Mr. Burr. Ms. Cantwell. Mr. Cardin. Mr. Carper. Mr. Chambliss. Mr. Coates. Mr. Coburn. Mr. Cochran. Ms. Collins. Mr. Coons. Mr. Corker. Mr. Cornyn. Mr. Cowan. Mr. Crapo. Mr. Cruz. Mr. Donnelly. Mr. Durbin. Mr. Enzi. Mrs. Feinstein. Mrs. Fisher. Mr. Flake. Mr. Franken. Mrs. Gillibrand. Mr. Graham. Mr. Grassley. Mrs. Hagan. Mr. Harkin. Mr. Hatch. Mr. Heinrich. Ms. Heitkamp. Mr. Heller. Ms. Hirono. Mr. Hoven. Mr. Inhofe. Mr. Isaacson. Mr. Johans. Mr. Johnson of Wisconsin. Mr. Johnson of South Dakota. Mr. Kane. Mr. King. Mr. Kirk. Ms. Klobuchar. Ms. Landrieu. Mr. Lautenberg. Mr. Leahy. Mr. Lee. Mr. Levin. Mr. Manchin. Mr. McCain. Mrs. McCaskill. Mr. McConnell. Mr. Menendez. Mr. Markley. Ms. Mikulski. Mr. Moran. Ms. Murkowski. Mr. Murphy. Mrs. Murray. Mr. Nelson. Mr. Paul. Mr. Portman. Mr. Pryor. Mr. Reed of Rhode Island. Mr. Reed of Nevada. Mr. Risch. Mr. Roberts. Mr. Rockefeller. Mr. Rubio. Mr. Sanders. Mr. Schatz. Mr. Schumer. Mr. Scott. Mr. Sessions. Mrs. Shaheen. Mrs. Shaheen. Mr. Shelby. Ms. Stabenow. Mr. Tester. Mr. Thune. Mr. Toomey. Mr. Udall of Colorado. Mr. Udall of New Mexico. Mr. Vitter. Mr. Warner.
So how do we vote?
Ms. Warren.
Okay, good.
Aye.
Would you mind giving me speaking for yeah, thank you. The big one.
Mr. Whitehouse. Mr. Wicker. Mr. Wyden. Senators voting in the affirmative: Alexander, Ayotte, Baldwin, Barrasso, Baucus, Bennett, Bozeman, Boxer, Burr, Cardin, Chambliss, Coates, Cochran, Collins, Coons, Corker, Cowan, Crapo, Donnelly, Fisher, Flake, Graham, Grassley, Hatch, Heinrich, Heitkamp, Heller, Hirono, Inhofe, Isaacson, Johans, Johnson of Wisconsin, Kane, King, Leahy, McCain, McConnell, Menendez, Murkowski, Murray, Nelson, Hall, Pryor, Reed of Rhode Island, Risch, Roberts, Rubio, Sessions, Vitter, Wicker, Wyden. No senator voted in the negative. Mr. Johnson of South Dakota, aye. Mr. Lee. Aye. Mr. Lee, aye. Mr. Shelby. Mr. Shelby, aye. Mr. Tester. Mr. Tester, aye. Ms. Warren. Ms. Warren, aye. Mr. Thune. Mr. Thune, aye. Mr. Toomey. Mr. Toomey, aye. Mr. Warner. Mr. Warner, aye. Mr. Hoven. Mr. Hoven, aye. Mr. Merkley. Mr. Merkley, aye. Mr. Murphy. Mr. Murphy, aye. Mr. Udall. Mr. Udall of New Mexico, aye. Mr. Franken. Mr. Franken, aye. Mr. Scott. Mr. Scott, aye. Casey. Mr. Casey, aye. Mr. Kirk. Mr. Kirk, aye. Mr. Blumenthal. Mr. Blumenthal, aye. Mr. Carper, aye. Ms. Landrieu. Ms. Landrieu, aye. Mr. Cruz, aye. Mr. Udall, Colorado, aye. Mr. Begich, aye. Ms. Mikulski, aye. Mr. Enzi. Aye. Mr. Enzi, aye. Mrs. Gillibrand. Mrs. Gillibrand, aye. Mrs. Hagan, aye. Mr. Cornyn, aye. Mrs. Feinstein, aye. Mrs. McCaskill, aye. Mr. Levin, aye. Mr. Reed of Nevada, aye. Mr. Rockefeller, aye. Ms. Stabenow, aye. Mr. Manchin, aye. Ms. Cantwell, aye. Ms. Klobuchar, aye. Mr. Lautenberg, aye. Mr. Sanders, aye. Mr. Schatz, aye. Mr. Harkin, aye. Mrs. Shaheen,